the way I know her. So Lina is a professor of power grid at the Royal Institute of Technology in Stockholm, Sweden. And her research area is focused toward development of sustainable grids with a special interest in reliability and asset management. So Lina and I have been a member of the governing board of IEEE Power and Energy Society. And Lina has served with Power and Energy Society and other IEEE structures for many years, since I think maybe 2009, Lina. And
Yeah.
she is a member of editorial board of the IEEE PS Transactions for Smart Grid, and a member of committee for World Energy Council, and also an expert pool for the European Union Commission. So she's been involved in many technical activities, and also in academia. She is very well respected. And the topic of this talk today is about electric vehicles. And given Australia is very behind compared to Europe with regards to electric vehicles, I thought that it's really a good topic for Lina to talk to us. I must add that Lina is also putting her name up for the PES presidency, to be the president-elect in the current elections. So it would be good for all of us to get to know you, Lina. And yeah, thank you so much for accepting our invitation to attend this session. And please present. I suggest if during the course of presentation, if you have questions, please use the chat box, and then I'll keep an eye on that. And in the end, I'll ask Lina your questions and also ask my own questions if I have them. Thank you so much, Lina. And yeah, please present.
Thank you so much for this very nice introduction and for welcoming to this session. So I have prepared a presentation. I will open it for you.
While you're opening the presentation, I must say that this session is being recorded, just for the information, and you have the strip on the top that it says it's being recorded.
Hello, everyone again. Now I can't see you, but can you see my screen?
Yes, Lina, we can see your screen.
So that's wonderful. So this is actually the new template for the IEEE. I find it's very nice. It's very active, but maybe a bit hard to see. So my topic for the speech today is about electrical vehicles for sustainable development. And I will contribute specifically with the European perspective. And this seminar I'm very happy to be invited for today. I know it's an open seminar, but specifically been approaching for region Asia and Pacific. I included my introduction here. I will not need to show it, but if you want to contact me afterwards, you're very welcome to do that. And the easiest way to reach me are on my email, but you can also find information on my webpage or LinkedIn. When I prepare my speeches, I normally think back, where did I meet you the last time? And now I was happy to think when actually I was in Asia in 2019. And for many of us, it was actually the last time we were traveling abroad. And when I was preparing my speech for today, Dean, I was very happy to see that we are actually here in the same picture. This is an amazing event. With the new conference that's called the T&D Asia. So I was very happy to be at this conference event, and that was my last time in Asia. I strongly believe in the way we work in IEEE, that we are actually sharing experience, and that can be made, as we are doing today, but we all, I think, know that the personal meetings are very important. So when I was preparing my speech for today, I was thinking when I met you the last time, and then I was thinking that this is a little just perspective. So I've been in Australia once. It was in Melbourne. It was for the ISGT Asia in 2016. And of course, today we will send our special thanking of our former president that unfortunately passed away very recently. We are also, we had a very nice time also in Bangkok with the committee that I have a picture for, and also meeting in Beijing. That was actually PMAPS. It's a conference which is a co-sponsored conference with IEEE within my core area in reliability. And then the beautiful picture here in the meeting in the beginning, here when you can see from ISGT in Bangalore in 2013. And I have had the privilege of working many years in the ISGT conference series, and I believe some of the key ways we work here, I think, is very strong for our society, which means that we're sharing experience, expertise. We normally bring in keynote speakers to the conferences locally, and we also arrange special events like the picture you see here with women in engineering. And this is one beautiful memory from 2013 in Bangalore. So the key message for my presentation today is that we will focus on the specifically development of EVs. And I would like to stress the EVs as a solution, a key solution for the sustainable development. Quite recently, I haven't included comments in the writing here, but I would like to mention, I think all of us are aware that just a few days ago, the new report from the climate development were launched. And what we can see are very sad news. It means that we have to work even faster for the sustainable development. Where I come from in Sweden, we have a very active debate regarding the portfolio for electricity. They are very, it's a very intense, because it's a big question if we should have nuclear or not. And what I try to communicate, because my key area, as was said here in the introduction, is we work with the grid, the power grid. So we are trying to support the total system. And we don't make a judgment on how the electricity is developed. And I had actually a speak in the national TV just a few days ago, trying to communicate on this. And it is really, really important that we are helping each other and getting this development faster, getting in place. So I would like to give a little bit reflection of why we are changing our portfolio in the EVs, in introducing the electrical vehicles. Then I would like to stress the European perspective. And in summary, what we can see is that we have huge developments and also incentives for the EV market. We are working very intense on the infrastructure. I have, in my family, we are driving EVs, and I'm a bit privileged to confess that it's actually my car you see on the picture here. And we have some practical experience of this, and I can make more comments of that afterwards. What I also stress in this presentation is the development of battery, because that it would be a very crucial component, both for the EVs, but also for the grid. So I'm stressing that, and also because there is a very advanced development in Europe in that area. And finally, I'm reflecting about very recent launch of the European Green Deal, what they call Fit for 55, where they are stressing even more about the developments for EVs. If we look a little bit more into detail, we see that the overall goal for us jointly in the world is that we need to work for sustainable development, basically to save our planet for future. What we have seen for the first time trying to reach details is that we are changing the portfolio for electricity, for example. So we see a lot of new electricity produced from wind and solar. And this is something that we have to find out new ideas and how we can use this in a smart way. EVs, electrical vehicles, they provide key solutions. We can replace the fossil fuels, but we can also use the EVs to strengthening the power grid. And together with storage, we can find solutions and flexibility. There are challenges, but also solutions. The charging infrastructure, for example, and one of the initial challenges here has to find a standardization. But what I can say now is that we look in Europe, we have one standard that almost, well, all European made cars are using that. And also the car I showed in the beginning, the T3, the Tesla, it's also adopted for that. So what we see now in Europe, I would say, is that we are building up the charging infrastructure. Currently, it's only one manufacturer where it really works, and that's for the Tesla. And what they have announced just a few days ago is that they will open their infrastructure for all cars. So that will be a good development for the total development of EVs. Another challenge where we work on challenges and solutions are the recycling. And I have included a figure here, and this figure is actually very recently developed, and it's developed from within an application that I worked with in Power Grid. And what we have tried to communicate in this figure is how we see that the power grid is evolving into a green grid, where we have developments for sustainability. And I want to mention this because this gives an important system perspective of the EVs. So what we see here for the grid is that we have development in creating an intelligent grid. And this is where we have using a lot of softwares. We can use the digital solutions for communications, for example. But the other is more hardware, a flexible grid. And this is where it comes in storage, where we can connect, for example, different kind of batteries and storage devices. And then the overall area of circular economics, where all materials in this for the high voltage equipment and for all related equipment that we need to use a circular economics perspective. And the EVs would be a key equipment in this solution. One example that I have used for a few years that I think give an example on both. Actually, when I started to created this example, it was to say what is smart grid. If I only had one picture to tell people what is the new, I think one of the key things in the development of the power grid is that we see new actors, we see new collaboration. And here is an example from a collaboration between a DSO. Vattenfall is a large DSO, it's state-owned company in Sweden. And Vattenfall made an agreement with BMW to buy batteries. And it is exactly the same batteries that you can see in this nice little E3 car. And what Vattenfall have used these batteries for is to make battery storage that are related to located close to the wind farms. So the development we have seen for the last maybe 10 years, we can say, is that we are collaborating between different actors. And one example is really how we can use the EVs. Here is an example where we have the same batteries, but what I think we can see in future is also that we can connect actually the cars themselves to grid and markets. A few words about overall in Europe. As you might know, we have the collaboration agreement with the European Union, and we have a collaboration between research and development. And what was decided in the end of last year was that in order to help up the economics after the COVID, well, not really after, but soon after, we hope, we were actually pushing forward some of the investment that was planned for the sustainable development. And this was called European Green Deal. Being a researcher, we were working very hard in the beginning of the year actually to get funding for projects within this big advanced research investment. So what is the target? Well, the target is to boost the efficient use of resources, and we are moving towards a clean circular economy, and we would like to restore biodiversity and cut the pollution. So the plan outlines investment needed and the financial tools available, and it explains how to ensure a just and inclusive transition. I can comment here that in later part of my presentation, I'm coming back to the Green Deal developments. So when we discuss about EVs, I just would like, since I'm a professor, I'm used to define terminologies, so I thought it's just good for us to make clear what we are discussing. So plug-in EVs is any road vehicle that can be recharged from an external source of electricity, such as wall sockets, and the electricity is stored in the rechargeable battery packs, drives and contributes to drive wheels. So the PV is a subset of EVs that includes all electrical or battery EVs and plug-in hybrid vehicles. Today, I would say that normally when we talk about EVs, we might focus on what we say the 100% EVs. But if we look back a few years, it was very popular with the plug-in hybrid vehicles. And since we know that when we already have the cars out there on the road, they will stay for some time. So in Sweden, for example, we have, I would say, quite a lot plug-in hybrid, but most number of new cars, I would say, are approaching to be 100% EVs. But when we look in the statistics, it's important to be a bit careful because statistics could be mixing these different categories. And most statistics we have now, I would say, is related to the PEV, so it will be the plug-in functionality. This is another, those who know me know that I take a lot of pictures, and this is actually one of my best working day ever back in life. It was a car race, and it was supposed, they said it was the first environmental car race. So at that time, this is very close to my office, and I just went down, and I actually had the privilege even to be picked up with this orange car, and we were having great experience trying out. I was driving all these cars I've been driving. There are 13 different ones, and the very close answer here is that there are a lot of different technologies out there, but this is 10 years ago. So what has happened since 10 years? Well, I would say that what we can see is that we are reaching about less number of technologies, and that we see that the electrification is really becoming a winning solutions. Being an engineer, I want to be general positive to technology developments, and by no way I would say that other solutions are not good, but the statistics show that the electrification here in the cars is really a strong, the strongest solution. So today, 10 years later, we can say that the full EV is the leading technology, and that many, many more models have been developed. At the end of 2020, the most sold worldwide car is the Tesla 3 that you see in the picture here, and secondly is the Nissan Leaf. When we discussed about the charging, unfortunately, Nissan doesn't have the same charging that is the coming standard here. So we will hope that will be changed in some way. And not at all wanting to promote, but if I look very true, it is actually one manufacturer that has solved the infrastructure today. And since we've been driving for many years, I can say, at least in my country, If you're driving a Tesla, it works perfect. If you're driving other cars, it does not work perfect. This year, we could see in the summer that a lot of people are happy new drivers of EVs, but it was crowded. So it was really fully crowded for the charging. But the good news is that Tesla has decided to open their charges. And if you see on the picture here, this is, we normally make a very long drive every year up north in Sweden, because normally when you have a car like this, you don't charge. If you go short distance, you only charge at home. That's my possibility. But when you go very long distance, you need to charge. And here you see a number of charges in the back of the car. And what we have followed, we have been driving for maybe 6 years. You can see that they have developed, they are building out quite fast. So it is really very nice to see that they're coming more and more. And from this year, we can see a lot of different brands of the cars. So now I will come into a little bit more statistics. It is actually a lot of very good information out there about EVs. And here is one figure that I found very nice. Here you can see annual registrations of plug-in EVs in Europe. And it's very clear that it's really becoming a large increase here, and that the full EVs are coming more and more. So at the end of 2020, we had more than 3.2 million EPVs in Europe. And the European stock of PVs is the world's second after China, accounting for about 30% of the global stock in 2020. So within EU, Sweden has the largest plug-in vehicles of 4%. And if you look in Europe, it's Norway that's leading this. We normally say a little bit when we have a dialogue that we would like to do what they do in Norway, because in Norway, they had very strong incentives for people to buy new cars. Actually, if you are in a big city in Norway, you would see a lot of Teslas everywhere. And the reason was that they took away the tax. So you had no tax if you bought a new EV car, and there were not so many alternatives actually. So it's very, very intense use of Tesla there. But obviously it's a very expensive way to take away the tax totally. And I'm showing so another figure where you can see from different countries what we have done. So hybrid EVs is still a large portion of the EVs in Europe. And the largest markets are in Germany, UK, France, and Netherlands. So what we can see is that there are great challenges to build the charging infrastructure, meeting the market for the EVs. If you have a car, the second-hand price for your car is really good if you have an EV. And that's very unusual to have a good second price for your car. So, and it showed that the market is huge currently. So here is another figure. I got this figure from a friend of mine, and it's interesting because when I first got it, I said, is this really interesting? Is it really interesting how many models? And we had a long dialogue about this. But he was trying to convince me that it's important because a lot of the people who buy a car, they are used to have a couple of models and they would like to have a couple of models. So he convinced me that this is important, even though I'm not totally convinced. But it's interesting to see that what has happened is that a lot of like traditional car manufacturers, they have a lot of models you can choose now if you would like to have an EV. So what is happening in Europe? Well, the European Commission has approved around 3.2 billion to support 7 member states for projects of common European interest for battery value chain. And as I said in the beginning, this is a key area to make a success of the EVs, that we can do the full chain. So we have an circular economic around it. So it has been a lot of work to try to define this, how we can take care of the batteries in the best way, and also to development, because we have a lot of development of battery manufacturing in Europe. this page here tried to give an overview of the different incentives we have for EVs in Europe. I mentioned before Norway, and if we look here in the graph, they're not okay. So this is because Norway is not part of the European Union, which is a bit complicated. So sometimes they are not part of the statistic. So they are basically not here. But if we look at other countries, part of the European Union, you can see, for example, Sweden here, that we get incentives for the ownership. And also if you buy a company car, for the ownership, if you buy an EV, for example, you will get back a certain amount of the money when you buy it. And you see some of the countries here, for example, Germany, Austria, Belgium, Greek, Hungary, Ireland, they're giving a lot of different incentives to promote people to invest in new cars, in EVs. So I would like to say a few words about this battery alliance. So the European Battery Alliance is a huge collaboration between different countries in Europe and both the industry and the academia. So what is the purpose here? Well, it is a strategic plan on batteries, and it's related to the regulation around it. So very shortly, I can say that Europe has come very far in regulating how we will work with creating the possibilities for EVs. Because to have the EVs in our society for a long future, we need to solve the full perspective, including the batteries. And here is one report that has been launched quite recently that gives examples on where are the investments. And here is an interesting figure where you can see a lot of investments ongoing. For example, in Sweden, we have Northvolt. I was very happy to take part in some of the very early developments supporting in research their work. And what we can see is that they are actually making a huge impact now in the future need for research and development and employment. And it's very interesting to follow on how the power grid developments are being developed actually to meet a huge demand in electricity. Because if you look at Sweden here, I'm not sure if I can point for you, but up north here, we don't have a lot of people living there. So this is actually very interesting development where we can see that in our country, we will have a large increase both for industry and people in an area which was very remote before. But we see in other countries a lot of building of different industries trying to give input in different parts of the chain for a battery development. And if you're interested in get fully reading of this review, I will be happy to get in contact with me afterwards. And you see, so it's a lot of different things happening in the investment to support this development. And maybe I can show here. Because at the end, we talk about the batteries, we talk about recycling, but then we come into the material, the minerals that we need to use here. So that is a current very important area now where we can see, do we have the minerals? How can we achieve them? Where do they come from? How can we capture them in a good way? So this is part of the development of EVs, if you look at the sustainable examples. So here is a quite recent result trying to indicate on the investment in R&D in automation. And what you can see here that Europe has a very, I would say, a long history of car manufacturers. So we have had in past a quite large budget for R&D. And we see that Japan, for example, also are one of the leading, and we see the developments here on the increase in different large areas. So European, we have a prediction here that we can see 64 million EVs on the road by 2030. The different predictions that are made are obviously not precise in any way, but all predictions so far have been underestimating. So what we can see is that the development is fast, it's going very well. And in this figure here, you can see dividing between the plug-in and it's a combine of the hybrid and the pure EVs. I mentioned before that during the summer here, we had recent developments when the EU Commission were presenting some details on how we can reach the Green Deal package. In summary, the key point is really that we will make an effort trying to work on the CO2 emissions. And the target here is that we would like in Europe, the target is to reduce to zero by 2035 the CO2 emissions from new cars. And this would basically mean the end of petrol and diesel. If in some cities, in some places, this might not look like a strong change. In my home city, for example, we will have, just in a few years, we will not be being allowed to drive in the city at all if you don't have zero-free emissions. So definitely we will be much faster than this. But if you look at the whole areas, everywhere, I mean, out on the farms, everywhere, I think still 2035 is soon. Because if you look at everyone, everywhere, it's a lot of different transportations that need to be changed. So in concrete terms, the Commission has presented different initiatives, and some of them need some updating on some laws. And our president today, Ursula von der Leyen, she wants to make Europe to be the first CO2 neutral continent. And she says like this: our economy, which is based on fossil fuels, has reached its limits. CO2 must have a price. This price must be so high that people choose the clean and environmental friendly solution. And I would say that if we listen a little bit to the political climate and also in the society, I would guess that we can see a very huge increase in tax for the CO2 emissions. Because it's very clear now for everyone that that is a key area that we need to work on. And EVs is definitely the solution for that if we look at the transportations. So in summary, it's a few new initiatives how we can achieve the goals of the Green Deal. And the CO2 emissions from new cars should be reduced to zero by 2035. And the target is to make Europe the first CO2 neutral continent. And the CO2 must have its price. It must be so high that people choose to clean environmental solutions. So the conclusions from my presentation today is that we are forecasting that Europe by 2030 will be the world's largest EV market based on the different reports that has been done, and that the EU Commission, they are acting by regulation and the R&D coordination. And specifically, the regulation has been very far on the battery part and recycling of material. Different member states are implementing different incentives. We are also using the EU COVID recovery funds to boost this development. We see a lot of electrification programs in the automotive industry. And also a new battery industry along with the value chain is under development. And for us that work more in the power grid, we will definitely be part of this value chain. And we also have this recent launched, the EU Fit for 55 program, that will accelerate this further. So this is what I have prepared, and now I'm very happy to take a discussion with you. And I think I might stop sharing so you can see me.
Yeah.
Yes.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Lena. It was a very informative presentation. By the way, I really like your car. And I must say, I'm ashamed looking at your car that I'm still driving a car that runs on diesel. So, and also hearing about what your president says about the future, I think my prime minister will be ashamed as well, because here still the fossil industry has a lot of power and drives some of the politics of the day and political agenda. So I would like to see if people have questions. I'll look at the chat, but I'll ask my own questions first. So Lena, electric vehicles, some people are interested because they are vehicles, right? We as power engineers are interested because they are electric. I'm wondering if in the European Union, they also had the objective of stabilizing grid through introduction of electric vehicles, or the driver was mainly environmental objectives?
So thank you for this interesting question, Dean. I think I totally agree with you that there are these different perspectives on why you, and for us in electricity, we're very excited about it. But as I said in the beginning, I'm also excited because I drive it and it's amazing. I would say I didn't include that here, but actually more than 10 years ago, I was part of one. There were two EU projects, short projects, where they would like to make like a pre-study of the expected value for the market with EVs. And the conclusion, our project we were part of was called Grid for Vehicles, G4V. And the closure of, the summary result from that, and it's 10 years ago, was that yes, if we aggregate the impact of the EVs, they will actually have a huge possibility to impact, and we can create a market. And today, those kind of markets exist. It's like a flexibility market, but it's still, I would say, it's still not solved hugely in practice, because it's still a bit complicated to connect your car and put it to and charge it to the grid. But we have shown theoretically that it's possible, and I would say that is also a reason I'm very excited about it because I think we can use the cars as a backup. But it's not. It's a lot, and that's what's interesting being an engineer, because it's not obvious how you do it. Because if you have a car, you're a private car, you would like to use it carefully. And you don't want to connect. I, for example, only connect my car when I want to charge it. Otherwise, I don't really like to connect it. I don't like to do it, so I don't. And I think I think that's a normal for a person. You wouldn't do it if you don't have a reason to do it. And it would actually not be good for your car if your car is used for balancing the grid. So, but on the other hand, if we see that using a transportation in future will be different than now, and I know, for example, it's a smaller company. Unfortunately, I'm not sure they survived last year for the COVID, but I'm sure they will come back. So it's a small company, and their business idea is that they will buy in like a pool of cars. So it's a pool of cars, and then you have a house. So if you have a big house with apartments, you would have, the idea is that you have a pool of cars that kind of everyone can use that lives in the house. And then those cars are plugged in. And then you would have like a local energy system for the house, because you would have solar and you would have your cars. and then you start to get volumes of it. So it's kind of interesting. So you could have it as a backup for your house. But my conclusion is that if you would like to do it like that, it should not be a private owned car. But if you have it like a pool, it's a very interesting solution. And definitely then you can have it like a backup. And that's even more of interest for people like us, because then you can have it like a new, I like to see the EVs like a new equipment in our grid. And it's an equipment that you can use for a lot of different things. But as an owner of a car, I wouldn't do it with mine. But if I live in a big house, I think it's a good solution, and it's interesting to do that in future. So very interesting question.
Thank you very much. Lina, I have a question from David Weinholz, who works actually for me in here. And he's saying, is inductive charging of electric vehicles taking off in Europe? Do you expect that it will? And if it did, it would make it easier for cars to be connected more often to assist the grid with more certainty.
Yeah. Well, as I said in the beginning, I'm an engineer, so I think that's very exciting. I like it. But on the other hand, if I look practical and look what's happening around us, as it looks like now, we will use the kind of fast charging that I showed on the picture. That is what's being developed now, and that is what we see, the large volume of infrastructure. For a long-term vision, I hope it would be something else, because even though I'm a power engineering, I feel it's a little bit old-fashioned having the cable. So I would love another solution for long term. But if we look practical, what's happening now, it's that kind of fast charging that you saw in the picture. That's what we see is coming. Maybe because the pictures I showed here was for personal cars. Maybe I can mention that we see a strong development even for heavy traffic. And I have some insights in the company that's close to where I work, because we have Scania and Volvo here in Sweden. And specifically in Scania, they have worked very far in this. So they are planning for heavy traffic EVs. And maybe in that sense, that kind of charging, inductive, could be more, but I'm not sure. I haven't seen it practically yet. So I hope it, but not, it's not today, I would say, not tomorrow, but maybe next.
Thank you. I have a couple of questions, but let me say, in your presentation, you said in Sweden, we say we want to be like Norway. And here in Australia, we also say we want to be like Norway. But, you know, our politicians say, oh, we don't need to do anything because, you know, in Australia, the car making industry has died, you know, in the last few years. And they say, okay, we are buying European cars and they're all going electric. So we just need to sit here and buy the cars and no need to do anything else. But, you know, here in Australia, the distance was an issue that prevented the electric vehicle to take off. And because there's large distances. And I have one question here from Daniel Sun, I think from China. And he's firstly saying, nice to hear your excellent research and speech, but asking what do you see how to overcome the difficulties with EV and making them more popular because of the distance?
Well, I mean, the car I showed on the picture here, when it's full charges, I can go 40 miles. I mean, European miles. So that is like 10 hours or something. So I would say that the cars that are sold today, I don't know a single person that can't drive it daily. Because I go once a year up north for our holiday, and then I need to charge it twice. Or actually, I could charge it once, but I normally do twice because I have small kids, so we need to stop anyhow. But if I go to my job, if I go for a trip for 3 hours, 4 hours, I don't need to charge it. So what we see is that the cars now, I mean, there are different ways of doing it. Either you can do it the way like Tesla do, that they make it larger and larger. So you don't need to charge. You can charge it at a suitable point where you can have a possibility to charge. But the other perspective is that you would do it the other way, that there are smaller cars and it could be easy to use for a small distance. What we see now in Stockholm, where my home city, is that if you're inside the city, I have the privilege of being a little bit outside, so I can charge in my own house. But if you're inside, it is a trouble now that we see that the market is larger than expected. So it is a difficulty for the people who are living inside the city to have a car. But I think there the attitude is, well, you don't need a car if you live inside, because you can take public transportation. But which could be annoying, of course, if people feel that they need it, but then it will be expensive. So I think they will handle it, that it's very expensive, and the people, the society will provide flexibility with, you can take a train, a bus, something like that. But if you live more remotely, then I would say it's not really a problem, because you would be able to charge slow where you are. And if you would like to go a very long distance, but you're not at home, then the infrastructure that's been building now is perfect. Because that's what's happening now, is that, as I take Tesla as an example, because they're the first brand who does it, if we take our highways, the European large highways, they have already made charging stations. So you can basically go through whole Europe and charge your car. And they have just announced that they will open those infrastructure for all car brands. I think it's next year or something. So I would say it is kind of solved. But on the other hand, we have to be realistic. And sometimes, I mean, if we compare in Europe, there are different standards on the grid. So I know that in some more remotely places, in some countries, it might be a challenge, I think, too, to do the charging. But the perspective is that if you have a little bit of time, it's no problem. But it's very slow. It's very slow. So the building infrastructure, it's important. But then they need people like us that are planning the grid. Because what I try to communicate regarding the grid planning is that we have to plan to support these new need of power to the charging stations. And that is very important. And what I see in my future mind is that will be a challenge. Because if I look, for example, in Sweden now, the authority, they are aware now. It's top priority to do electrification transportations. So they are promoting companies to start up business to build charging stations. So we will have a lot of, next year, I believe we have all charging stations we need. But for the grid, we don't have the incentives for the grid companies to build the power grid. So I believe that can be a challenge. But at the end, for the people, in many countries, we have a lot of tax. And the tax will be high for CO2. And then it's no question, we will change it. So I think, I believe it will be a change. And to have an EV is very nice. I mean, it's clean. So I say it's a little bit like when you got your first like dish machine in your kitchen, you never want to lose it because it's helping your daily life so much. And for me, it's similar with the EV, that when you have it, you will never go back because it's so clean and nice. So I think as private people, they would love it too, if they have the right incentives. Yes.
Thank you. You convinced me. So my next car will be electric.
Yeah.
We have a couple of questions. So Wei Yang from China is asking, is it possible to replace EV with hydrogen-driven vehicle from EU policy perspective in the long run?
Some people believe that is a solution. we will see what happens. I mean, it is truly some. I mean, there are developments in that area, and I would say currently it depends who you speak with, and we will see what happens. But I would say, yeah, we can see it. But yeah. I'm a little bit skeptic to that technology, okay. but some people are very positive. So yeah, it depends on who you speak with. I must say,
in Australia, because of the large penetration of renewables and the fact that some of this energy sometimes need to be used, yes. You know, green hydrogen is a real alternative. So yes. People yes. are working on it. So hopefully yes. that also be.
Yeah. And it will come, and I think, I mean, some of my colleagues are very, very happy about that area. So it will definitely be one solution. Yes.
Okay, I have a question from Ali Reza in Australia. He says, well, thank you for your presentation. In Europe, has there been any project on using electric vehicles to perform flexible demand response? So that is one of the questions. Yeah.
Definitely, yes. So the use of EVs for demand response is definitely a very, very important and area. There have been a lot of different projects in this area. I can come back later to give more details, but I can give specifically in my closer experience is that we had all kind of flexibility. I mean, they're testing flexibility markets, and then you don't really care about how you create it. So the cars could be one solution, the battery one. So that is definitely a lot of pilots. So I would say we have a lot of pilots testing it on how to work on it. At the end, it depends a lot on the market value and how we put the price. But technology-wise, we can show that we can solve the flexibility where EVs be part of it, and there are pilots. Yeah.
Okay, Ali Reza also asked if we are optimizing the charging station based on traffic and also electrical consideration.
If we could you reframe the question? If that happens,
so where to put the charging yes. stations, the consideration is only traffic or also electrical consideration. For example, you know, in some areas, maybe, you know, having more demand is better. You know?
Yeah, you know, that is a good question. I think they have done it only traffic-wise so far, because I know it was very recently. It was a call. I mean, this is a Swedish example, but it was a call in Sweden where they wanted like small companies or any type of companies to give a proposal on building a new infrastructure charging, and they had anyone could apply, and the requirement for that was that you could count on the economic value of it. So, and to do that, you were counting on the traffic. You would not. I mean, it's a very good question, because I totally agree that at the end, it's important to have the system perspective, so to know if it is available electricity or not. But I believe that the knowledge to do that calculations, they can't do that. I mean, the only one who can do that is basically the DSOs, so they wouldn't do it. But I guess, I mean, to do anything reasonable, they must need some kind of information, of course.
Yes, yeah.
But it's a very good question, because I expect, coming from the grid perspective, that we will have a lot of troubles in a few years, because they will build a lot of very nice infrastructure for the charging, and because in a lot of countries it takes very long time to build the grid infrastructure. So the charging infrastructure, I think it's quite fast compared. So I see a little bit gap in there. But on the other hand, if you look at the, I trust now that most of us are engineers, because if you look at the society, sometimes it's difficult because sometimes we can show that we have the technology, we can solve this. But then it could be difficult for people to take a decision to do it because they don't really see the problem. So sometimes it can be easier for us to when we can say, oh, here is a problem, we can solve it. You see it. So sometimes, even though it's sad, but sometimes we can say, okay, now you build the charging, fine. But now you broke the grid. Okay, we can fix it. But it would have been good to tell them, we will start fixing the grid now because we know you will break it in a few years. But that's difficult because they don't see it's so critical decision. But I've said that in my country for many, many years, that we need to strengthen the grid. And that will save us a lot of troubles. But still they are hesitating to take those decisions. But so in some way for society, maybe this is the only way that we build it, and then everyone see this is a trouble, and then they will give us money to build a grid. I don't know.
Yeah, I'm sure this is how it works, at least in Western societies. Because in Perth, when I remember where the air conditioners first came in, a lot of well-to-do suburbs first bought the air conditioners, and then suddenly the cables that fed those suburbs were not adequate. So we were thinking, oh, we had to replace those cables because these are right on the limits. But then the rooftop PV came, and the same people went and bought rooftop PVs, and then this problem went away. No, I can see that with electric vehicles. They have money though, so they will buy electric vehicles and create that problem that somehow we have to fix. That's why we are here, right?
yes, we just fix it. It's okay.
So sorry that I have another question in the chat. Are you okay to answer
absolutely.
that? So Yi Yang from China, he's asking about the role of, he's saying aggregator. So I suppose, someone will aggregate, and then the role in demand response and ancillary services. So how this can be done to support the system in terms of ancillary services.
So a lot of work has been done in this perspective of how we can create and we can aggregate the impact. We call it now I lost the word, but it's kind of a not physical actor that we aggregate together.
Virtual,
virtual, yes. So I've seen a lot of theoretical studies on this, and a lot of publications, and we will have the CIRED conference this autumn. And there I know it's a lot of papers in that area showing examples. But so far, I think a lot of those examples are pilots still. But the purpose is to do it. And so technology-wise, we're showing we can do it. And in our countries, I would say in Europe, we have a lot of regulations. We have a lot of rules. So it takes quite a long time. In Sweden, for example, we had very recently, a lot of the laws were changed. Good law, because we needed to change them because we were not allowed to connect local generation at our it was very difficult to do like local small generations, so we needed to change in the law. And I would say these are similar things that, so we are going there. We have pilots, we have done a lot of things, but we need to change some of the laws before we can do it broadly. But I'm very sure that that's the way it's going, and that's why the EVs are so interesting for us, because we can both drive them and use them in a good way. So it's really a good part of the green power grid developments.
Yeah, thank you. Bin Zheng from China is asking about the progress of vehicle to grid in Europe, and if there has been a market developed to suit this.
Well, yes, and I think on one of the pictures I showed that we are coming. I mean, China now has a huge market, but Europe is really catching up. And we can see, it's very easy just to see statistics. So if we look at the new sold cars, they are EV cars. And people, since I told you personally now I have an EV car, I get in the mail, I get papers. Can we buy your car? I mean, this is true. So they actually hunt you to buy your car and say, no, I want my car. And I mean, this has never happened before. So people really want to buy EVs. It's happening in whole Europe, I would say. So it's definitely a market for it. And industrial wise, we are taking the next step. And that's why I showed on the battery. So it's a huge focus in Europe now on battery industry. So they are developing, and it's pushed from the EVs, but also the next step. So we see that we need other batteries for flexibility. So I would say the market is here, and the market has shown that people are ready to change. So it's nice. It's a very nice development.
So Lina, I promise this will be the last question. I know you're tired, so thank you very much. My background is also asset management, and I know you have an interest in asset management.
Yeah.
Generally, the discussion of the fossil fuel industry is that electric cars also have batteries that need to be manufactured, and they have a relatively limited lifetime, and then the disposal also impacts the environment. So this lifetime of the battery or the electric vehicle, how do you see the CO2 emissions, in manufacturing and then disposal of the batteries?
Yeah. So thank you so much for this question, Dean. I think you are pointing out the very, very crucial question about the batteries and the lifetime. And I can say that one very new subject for research that I'm very excited about is what we call second lifetime. So when we look at the batteries, we look at the second lifetime. So we're using them for storage. And I know that in California, they have started to use it like that. Because if you look at the cars, we need like a perfect battery. So in the car, it's a lot of restrictions on the format, the size, etc. So it should be perfect. But if you go to storage, normally you don't have restrictions on the size, the volume, or you can do a little bit other. You don't have the same quality restrictions. So it's a perfect match that you can use the used batteries from the cars in a storage perspective. And we are not there yet because it's still early in the development. So we don't have a lot of used cars yet. But I personally believe that is the only way forward, that we have to use them. And the number of pictures I showed in the middle show that it is a lot of thinking around this on how we can reuse the materials. And a lot of colleagues in other research are trying to develop the next generation of batteries. When we see now that the big manufacturing, they are using the lithium-ion batteries. So that is what we see is the technology used today. But a lot of researchers do research on other alternatives. So I think it is very, very important that and that's why it's even more exciting for us, because I think we can really focus on second lifetime on those batteries and how we can use that for the grid, because that is perfect for the grid. So we are aware, I would say it's an awareness about it. And I have done just some simple attempts for LCC calculations with the student projects, and we can see. We can see that it's beneficial to invest in a battery in a small scale. That's what we can show. But I think it's needed to do in more detailed assessment of this. But it's in a future area, very interesting area. So thank you for that question.
Thank you so much, Lina. Usually when we have the speakers, in the end, we offer them a bottle of wine, Australian wine. And unfortunately, I can't offer you, and there is no virtual bottle of wine. I'm sure if Corona goes on, somehow virtual bottle also will be created. But Thank you so much. Your presentation has been really informative, and thank you for sharing your knowledge with all of us. And I also thank everyone who's been on the call and attended and asked question. There you go. So in the chat box, there is a glass of wine for you.
Oh, I will look at it so I can see it. Oh, I can't see. No, here. Oh, that's beautiful. We like Australian wine in Sweden. It's very popular. So we will definitely next time.
So thank you so much, and
Yeah.
we will see you hopefully sometime soon in Australia.
Yes, I hope so. So thank you, everyone. Very nice to meet you all. Good night or good morning.
Cheers.
Yeah, bye-bye.
Good
Thank
night. Good night here.